Good morning, everyone. This is Brett Simon. Thought I'd jump on live this morning, as I've been doing over the last few weekends, and taking your questions. So let me just start off with DV 2020 and DV 2021. No enormous news. There's no news on the appeal yet. There was news about Curtis Morrison's attempt to sort of unblock things for his case. His motion to Judge Mehta was rejected. It was denied. Essentially, the government argued correctly, I think, that the court, Judge Mehta, lacked jurisdiction over his case, in a sense, because the case was now with the appeal court. I do think there was a comment made by Charles Cook that suggests that the full class action group of lawyers may try a similar sort of tactic with the appeals court. We'll have to wait and see whether they do that and whether that's going to be successful. But other than that, we're still waiting for the appeal. Good morning to those of you that have joined already, and sorry you missed me yesterday. I was just very busy with with home life. I'm glad to see there's people that have previously been helped. Okay, let me just jump into some questions. Let's see if we can answer some questions. Okay, have you got a chance for EU 30K? You've got a chance right now. Previously, I had estimated the final cutoff capacity of the system if they issued all the way up to 55,000 visas. I felt that the most likely range was with around about 35 to 37 for EU, 35 to 37K. But I did point out that the cutoff could technically come as early as 31K. Now, that's all based on 55,000 visas being issued. And right now, the performance is not what we need it to be in order to get to the 55,000 visas being issued. They only issued about, they only scheduled around about 2,500 cases in March, which was for May interviews, and they only scheduled about 2,500 the previous month. That pace is not enough. We need to see an increase in order to get to the 55,000 visas or close. And so, you'll just have to wait and see. At EU 30K, yeah, it's a bit nerve-wracking for you, I'm sure, but you'll just have to wait and see whether you can get a chance. But yes, I think technically, you could have a chance. Of course, some of that depends on the embassy you're with. But generally, the EU embassies are generally doing better than the African embassies, for example. How to apply for the DV Lottery 24? Too late for 24. The next entry period will be in October of this year, and that will be for DV 2026. Okay, so you enter in October. We don't have the entry dates yet precisely, but it'll be sometime in October, early October. And then the results are drawn in the following May, and the program starts in the following October. It's a long process even to get selected. Okay, so but if you want to enter in the lottery this October. I have a question. Says Ken, if a husband and wife get selected for DV, should both of them process the DS260? So basically, they would look at the two case numbers. That's the first thing. They would say, okay, which case number is lower? And probably process on one of the cases if both are if one is very low and one is a very high case number. But the other thing is the principal applicant has to be able to meet the requirements for educational or work experience. So do they both meet the requirements? Without any doubt, are they both going to be able to pass the interview? Right, and meet the requirements? That would be an important consideration. And there's no harm in completing the DS260 for both cases. But what you must do is let's say the husband is the lower case and you decide you're most likely to succeed on that one, the husband has to list the spouse and have a DS-260 for the spouse related to that case. And on the other DS-260, or on the other win, you would complete both DS-260s as well, right? You don't separate the DS-260s, you complete them both on both cases if you want to try and move ahead with both cases. And the first one that gets interviewed and issued is the case that you proceed with. That's basically it. What about Nepal? This time my case number is 2024 AS 12,000 and something. What are my chances? You've got a chance. You have to wait and see. Am I safe? 57K in Nairobi. Look, no one is really safe until they get the visa in their hands. Could you get an interview? Yeah, you can get an interview at 57K in Nairobi. They're a little bit backlogged at the moment, but they're taking a lot of cases each month. So I think technically, I haven't done the numbers on that in the last few days, but I think technically you could get a chance. So, but you do need to see Nairobi taking at least as many interviews as they've been taking each month up until now, at least as many. You probably want to see a few more cases being taken, right? What do you expect in this month's VB, Simon Sir? I expect a bigger jump than we've seen before in probably the three main regions, like Africa, EU, and Asia. I'm expecting Africa probably to go towards 60K, maybe even above. I'm expecting 3,000 or 4,000 jump in EU as a minimum. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 jump. That wouldn't surprise me. In Asia, I'm expecting to see a reasonable jump, at least 2,000, probably nearer 3,000 or 4,000. What I'm thinking is the government are under scheduling, and that's partly because some of the bigger embassies are not able to even keep up with the current visa bulletin in terms of capacity. But there are some other embassies that are doing very well and could take extra case numbers. And so I'm expecting the government to sort of push the numbers a little bit in order to widen the net and use more of the capacity available in some of the other embassies that are keeping up with the visa bulletin. So that's what I'm hoping they'll do. I'm just hoping that's going to be the way, really. We'll see. What do you think will be the interviews for EU 18.4 in Frankfurt? Yeah, I don't know. You have to watch the next couple of VBs and see what happens. I would hope you would go current in the next VB. So you'll have to watch that, but you'll have to also pay attention to how Frankfurt is doing in terms of whether they're keeping up with the visa bulletin progress, right? So it'll come when it comes. You don't need to worry. I mean, unlike a lot of people who are genuinely worried about their cases, like at EU 30, you're just worried about when, right? Well, exercise a little bit of patience, right? You should be safe. Is the affidavit of support mandatory? SA region, South America, or South America region, right? Yeah. So it depends. Basically, there's no sort of set answer on this. There are some embassies that almost always, if not always, ask for an affidavit of support. And when we're talking about an affidavit of support, we are talking about the I-134, not the I-864. You cannot use the I-864 in this process. You have to use the 134. Some embassies will almost always ask for it. Other embassies will ask for it sometimes, and it's based on how the consular officer feels about the applicant that he's interviewing or she is interviewing. And it's just an assessment based on who the person is on the other side of the desk, in a sense, right? Do they think you have any risk of becoming a public charge? Well, then they may ask you for an I-134. There are some embassies that seem to almost never ask for it, and people tell me almost aggressively, they'll never ask for it in this embassy. They never ask for it, right? Well, it's pretty stupid to say never, right? Don't assume that you'll never be asked for it. And if you can get an I-134, no matter what embassy you're at, you should probably have one, because if you're asked for it in the interview and you don't have it, then it creates a delay, and the delay can sometimes be the end of your case. So why wouldn't you just get it? If you can get it, get it. If you can't get it, okay, you have to think how else you're going to support your case in terms of the finances. Show your own savings. Perhaps you've got very good job prospects in the USA. Perhaps you can get a job offer from a company, a real job offer from a real company in the USA. There's various ways to meet the obligation. So the I-134 is one way, and if you think you might be asked for it, then and you can get it, then get it. Why wouldn't you do that? Okay. Do you think the next VB will be the breaking point of all regions going current in case it was as low as 8K? There is no reason, and there has never been any reason, why all the regions in DV 2024 would go current, right? There are too many selectees by far. Now, it shouldn't have gone current in DV 2023 either, or DV 2022. It shouldn't have gone current. So I can't say it will never go current. I can't say it's impossible. It is possible. But technically, a well-managed year, well managed by the visa office, with 142,000 selectees, should absolutely not go current. And so, it's not a question of when that will happen. It's a very, very small chance that maybe it will happen. That's about it. Okay. But I don't think you should rely on that. Okay. Do you think AF 86K will go current? Mathematically, no, it shouldn't go current. Is it possible? Well, the last couple of months has been so slow on this scheduling that, as I mentioned earlier in this live, one solution to that is to push the visa bulletin numbers higher than they really need, in order to widen the number of widen the net to allow more embassies to do some of the work. So it's not impossible that we get a high number like 86K being current, but it's not a certainty. You just have to wait and see. Okay. I have a petition going on. Can I apply for F1 student visa for my master's in the USA? You have a petition going on. Well, you don't tell me what sort of petition is going on, but if you mean a DV lottery petition, then yes, you can apply for an F1 visa in the meantime. Just understand that when you submit a DS-260, it's an application for immigrant visa, and the fact that you submitted a DS-260 for any sort of immigrant case makes it harder to get a non-immigrant visa, because they suspect that you're trying to move to America for good, and that while you're there, you're trying to adjust status from the F1 visa. So they will have more concern to see proof that you're going to go back home after the F1 visa period is over, right? So that's the risk you've got there. But there's no technical reason why you can't apply for it. 61K Egyptian in Abu Dhabi embassy. What's your expectations to get an interview? I don't know. You have to wait and see. That's too complicated, frankly, to answer. It depends on whether Egypt is going to go as high as 61K. Depends on Abu Dhabi. They're not there right now in terms of that number. You'll have to wait and see. There's nothing I can really do to give you a solid prediction on that. Desmond says, good day, boss. I'm 6K in Ghana. Submitted DS-260 May 30th and went current in August. Do I have any chance to get to an L in Ghana? You have some chance, because your number is extremely low. And it's really sad that I have to even talk that way. Because, if you've got a case number of 10,000, 15,000, that's still an extremely low case. But in Ghana, that's very risky. 10,000, 15,000 probably isn't going to go current, or rather isn't going to get an interview in Accra. But at 6,000, you've got a chance. So, fingers crossed for you. There's 4 months of scheduling left. And, as long as Accra keep up interviews at least 30 to 40 per month, then you would have a chance. Okay. Felix says, I would like to ask a parent with kids above 21, do they need to list their children in DV program entry? And if not, are there repercussions for not including children above 21 years? If the children are above 21, you don't include them in the DV entry. You do include them if you're selected and you're filling out the DS-260. You list the adult children. Okay, but no, you don't. The rules for DV Lottery is that when you're doing the entry, you only list the children that are under 21 and single, unmarried. You must list all the children, whether they're biologically yours, stepchildren, or adopted. You have to list them all, right? But not any children above 21. Okay. Case number is AF72000. Do I have a chance? I'm from Cameroon. You've got a chance. Your case number is in the range where it would be weird if we don't get to that case number. And so, yeah, you've got a chance. Cameroon's doing pretty well. Fingers crossed for you. I want to ask, my friend is from Monrovia, 68K. So Monrovia is probably the embassy that's doing best in terms of keeping up with the visa bulletin. Consistently, if you look at the latest, the highest numbers scheduled, you'll see Monrovia in the top few. So if any embassy can keep up with the numbers, then probably Monrovia is probably that one, right? And so 68K, yeah, you've got a good chance. Case number AF102, is there any chance? I guess you're asking, Hammett. Very risky, right? Case number of 102,000, almost no chance. You'll obviously have to wait and see what happens, but it's a very risky number, right? We are AF65700. We need to apply for adjustment status since we're in the US already. When would you guess we should start the process? You have to start the process when you see the visa bulletin published that makes your number current. You can't start before then, right? Now, let's say the next visa bulletin goes to 60,000, right? Just as an example, then you couldn't file your I-485 yet. But if the visa bulletin after that, which would be published, what are we talking about now? April, right? So if the visa bulletin that is published in May makes your number current, then you could immediately file your I-485, right? That's part of the early filing process. And you really need to understand what that is and make sure you're taking advantage of that. And if you don't understand what the early filing process is and you're not ready to file your I-485, then I implore you to go to forums.immigration.com, get onto the adjustment of status topic, where there is a person with the username of someone's mum. She is fantastic. She's very knowledgeable. She's more knowledgeable about DV related adjustment of status than any lawyer. And I'll put that up against any of the lawyers that I know and love, and even some of the lawyers that I know and don't love. But you know, she is the expert on adjustment of status, and she knows so much. I don't even try and pretend that I know as much as she does, right? So she's the person you need to be asking about adjustment of status. But I can tell you that, you know, as soon as the visa bulletin makes your number current, that is the point at which you can file your case, right? You don't have to you don't have to wait until the month of being current to file, and you need that extra time. It will give you an extra 6 or 7 weeks or so. Okay, good luck with that. I entered the US 2 days ago after spending 5 months outside of the US, knowing that I had already had my green card issue in October. When I entered the offices, they were asking a lot of questions. Okay, that's okay, Mohammed, no big deal. You're a lawful permanent resident. No need to be worried because they're asking questions, right? They're supposed to ask questions, no big deal. What about 37K? Yeah, you got a better chance, but we'll have to wait and see. Good morning, Mr. Brett. Here in Sierra Leone, good afternoon. Freetown, yeah. Freetown US Embassy are not issued 2NLs for DV 2024. They are too slow this year. Can you tell me why, Mr. Brett? Is that true? Hang on a second, let me just check something here. So, okay, let me move this over and I'll show you what I'm going to do here. Probably would be helpful. Okay, so if I present entire screen. Okay, so first thing I would do to check your statement, right, is to go and check Freetown, Sierra Leone, and see what they've done. Now, you said they're not issue out 2NLs for DV 2024, right? And so I just went on here and checked on Zarthisius's site, as you can see, and I put in Freetown, and I can see, well, they've sent 36 2NLs in March, they sent 37 in February, and they sent 60 in January, right? And prior to January, they had sent 139. So your statement of they not sent any 2NLs out is not true, it's not accurate, right? And if we look at the number ranges where they've sent, you can see that they've sent cases right up to about 44,000, just over 44,000. So they're not doing too bad. There's a little bit of I wouldn't say it's a backlog, but it looks like some skipped numbers there, which I was asked about this the other day. This is an interesting thing where they have issued 2NLs up to about 43,000 or something. And then there's one case which is at something like 45,000, which appears sort of after a gap, right? And someone asked me, why was that? Why was that particular case in that position? And what I did was, let me show you. What I did was I brought up the file. It was this case number 45568, right? And you can see that was made, that got its 2NL for Johannesburg on the 12th of March, right? But if we look at the latest file here, which is not that one, which I'll have to download. Let me just go get that. So let me check that latest the latest file. So download the file. I haven't looked at that file already. That's weird. Okay, then we'll open that file, and we're gonna search for 45. What was that case number? 45. Okay, so let's go search for that in the other file. So somebody asked, why is this case number just out there, after a gap? Now you can see that case has become ready at Yaoundé, and it's still that same case. March 12th is when they got the 2NL, but that 2NL was for Johannesburg. So what that particular person did was they got scheduled at Johannesburg, and they received their 2NL on March 12th. And between March 12th and the last few days, they had arranged to move their case to Yaoundé, right? So it looks like it looks a bit odd. Like if we look at the latest file here, this is stuff that any of you can do. I'm just downloading the file from Zarthisius's site, right? So if we look at YDE, oops. Okay, we have a look at all the cases that have been scheduled. We can see that prior to that 45568 case, the cases were going up in sort of roughly in a reasonable order up until case number 43,000. There's 4302, there's 42743, 42710, right? And then there's a gap of like 2,000 cases from 43 to 45 and a half, right? Why is there a gap? Why are there no cases in between? Well, again, I was asked this question the other day, so I remember investigating this one. And it's because that case had previously been scheduled in Johannesburg and moved back. Now, this is what I've talked to some of you about in terms of moving on paper. This could be someone who moved from Johannesburg to Cameroon, right? Could be possible. Or it may be someone who is always in Cameroon, who moved to South Africa, got scheduled there, and then moved their case back to Cameroon. And Cameroon have accepted that, right? The same thing can be seen in Addis. In previous years, I got a question about that this morning. Why, if Addis is only going to schedule up until 20,000 or whatever number it is, why do you then see a big jump? If we look at, well, let's have a look at the previous year's data. I'll show you that. How many of those? Okay, so let's open up another one. And this will be a little bit clearer what I'm saying here. So if we look at in DV 2023, right, for Addis, what you have is, you see there's, and we'll switch to Africa only, just to make sure we're just looking at Africa. Addis had scheduled cases up until the 20,000 range, and then had these sort of odd cases at various ranges, right? And there's one case there at 62,000 or so. How did that case get scheduled, you could ask? Well, it's because they had used this ability to get scheduled some other embassy and then move their case back to Addis. And Addis accepted that, right? And so some idiot wrote emails to KCC to ask them to stop me talking to you and giving this sort of advice, which was a completely moronic thing to do, because like KCC don't have any right over me whatsoever. I have what's called freedom of speech in this country, right? I can say whatever the hell I want. And as long as I'm not breaking the law, and I'm not, then I can certainly give you suggestions on how to handle your case. KCC can't do a damn thing about it. So the moron that wrote to KCC saying, oh, Simon's telling all these people to do these things, that's a stupid little boy that I know who it was. And then I got a copy of the email. Somebody sent me a copy of the email that he'd sent to KCC. And of course, I've heard nothing from KCC, because they've got absolutely no right to tell me as an American citizen what I can and can't do, right? And I've broken no laws, right? So, the whole thing was just stupid. But the fact that one moron thought that was an okay thing to do is kind of funny. Anyway, what I was telling people to do, or what I was explaining to people, was explaining how these cases managed to get scheduled way above the number range that Addis scheduled in 23. And that's all I've done. I've explained what people had done and left it up to you as to what you want to do. Okay, so hopefully that's going to save some people's cases. I think it's a worthwhile thing to understand. Anyway, in terms of Abdul's question, we talked about Freetown, and we talked about Yaoundé. We talked about Yaoundé and then digressed to Addis. So I think I took a little bit of a diversion there, but you can see that Freetown has, in fact, scheduled cases. So Abdul, what you said was not true. Manish, is it possible for Nepal to get current? Without its region in Asia being current, I'm just curious about how this works. Right, so Nepal doesn't have any cases above 13,000. So in a sense, if you see any number that's of 13,000 or above for Nepal, it would mean that Nepal has gone current, right? So what they would sometimes do is they might say, okay, Asia is going to be current up to 18,000, right? And if they want to no longer limit Nepal, they would simply remove the accept number. And that means then that the number is going to be the same as the rest of Asia, which would be at 18,000. It's very unlikely that Asia would be a number less than Nepal, right? That's not going to happen. It's not that it can't happen technically, it just wouldn't happen in that particular case. And so, you can have pretty much any sort of combination you like. But as I say, because Nepal runs out of selectees before the number 13,000, there are no selectees above 13,000, then it is more likely than not that Asia will go above that number and Nepal will have its accept removed if they want to make it current, right? That's what current would look like for Nepal this year. Okay. Meta Ed says, I'm from Nepal and have completed my bachelor studies from India. Do I have to submit a police report from India too? Well, if you were in India doing your bachelor studies, then yes, you're probably going to have to get a police report. But what you should do is go read the reciprocity page for India to make sure that you understand how you would obtain a police report, whether such a police report is available, and so on. Okay, so number one, read the instructions so you understand when you have to provide police reports, because some of you underestimate the number of countries you're going to have to produce police reports from. It can be more than just the one you're currently in, right? And then for each police report that you need, go read the reciprocity page for that country, okay? And in some cases, they'll say things like, not available. If you're not in the country, it's not available. And not available meaning you don't have to provide it. But you need to read that reciprocity page to understand, okay? Still recovering from the disappointments of DV 2023, getting stuck, I guess, in 221G. Oh man, that's brutal. To get stuck in 221G at the end of the year and have the thing time out, horrible. So I feel for you. Better luck in 25, right? DV 25. Good luck for that, Natar. Yusuf, what do you think about 107,000? Is there any hope? Almost no hope, Yusuf. I mean, that's as likely as me dating Jennifer Lopez soon, right? Not very likely. Let's be honest. Is there any? I mean, could it happen? Could I date Jennifer Lopez? Well, I mean, it's possible. It's possible, and it's about as possible as your case going current. But yeah, never give up. Until we see the final VB in July, don't give up until then. Okay. Mohammed, is there any risk I could lose my green card if I go outside the US for 1 month? It depends what you do outside the USA. If you go outside the USA and try and, there are certain things you can do. If you try and live outside the USA, if you take a citizenship outside the USA and then come back, those sort of things can cause you problems. But generally speaking, a 1 month absence for you to go and do a vacation is not going to cause you any problem. Okay. And you know, when you were the person that asked about the questions at the airport, when they ask the questions, just be calm, just be reasonable and answer the questions, but be confident because you're a returning lawful permanent resident. You've got nothing to worry about. So, you know, don't let their questions intimidate you. Don't be intimidated by officials. This is not some banana republic, some third world country or something. This is not like that. They don't have as much power as you might think they have, or even that they might think they have, right? So if you're confident, I mean, I can tell you, no immigration officer has ever given me a difficult time that I couldn't handle. And I've entered the USA hundreds of times, both on visas and as a green card holder and now as a citizen. Because I traveled a lot up until a few years ago. I traveled a hell of a lot. So you know, just don't worry about. They're just people doing their job. They're not that powerful, and you know, they can have questions and they can refer you for a secondary set of questions. That's happened to me a couple of times, but again, no big deal. If you're doing nothing illegal, you've got no problems. Okay. Elvis is in the building. Elvis, AS99, can I get a chance to get a 2NL, sir? Yes, you could. DV 2020, I talked about right at the beginning. Case number 38K in Dakar. Do I still have a chance of getting a 2NL? I think so, yes. Go check the data like I just showed I was checking the data. Robel, what do you think is going on with Addis not releasing the interviews for the past month? They did. They released 88 in March. My parents are 18K. When do you think they'll get scheduled for interview? Okay, let me do it again. I feel like people perhaps don't pay attention or something. I don't know. I'm not quite sure what the problem is, but let me hide that question for a minute. I'm going to show you how I look at the data, right? So we'll look at 24 for a start. And we're going to go down here and have a look at Addis. And here's the things that you should be doing when you want to know how your embassy is doing. Firstly, you look at whether they are sending 2NLs. Now, in March, for May interviews, Addis accepted 88 cases, 87 on that day and 1 on the previous day, right? So it isn't true that they're not accepting cases. Then you have a look at the data and you say, okay, until what case number have they taken cases, right? And I can tell you that what they did in March was they accepted a bunch of cases from about 2,000 or 3,000 or so up to about 11,000, and they filled in basically some numbers that have been skipped. And so that's what they did. They didn't issue any 2NLs for case numbers higher than the highest case they'd already accepted, which was case number 14,214. What a memory I've got. That's exactly the highest case number. Now, you can go and look at in the spreadsheet that I just downloaded, right, which was the latest spreadsheet here. You can go and search, as well as I can, for, if you want to know the details about a particular embassy, you can go search, right? And you can see, for example, if I scroll down here and see, that's not right, I don't want Gandhi, I just want Addis. Okay, so now we've got Addis, right? And if we have a look at the 88, we can see, okay, if I turn off the 2NL dates for all the other dates this year, then I'm going to see the cases that they accepted interviews for in March, right? And if I go down here, if I show you down at the bottom here, that says 88 out of 243,000. That's the 88 cases that are shown on Zathisius's website, right? I'll zoom in a little bit so that this might be a little bit easier to see. And you can see the case numbers that they sent 2NLs for is up to 11,324. So they sent 2NLs to 88 cases in March for May interviews from case number 113 up to 11,300. Okay. Now, prior to that, in Addis, they had received cases up to this case number I just told you about, 14,214. Right? That's where they're up to. Now, your case number is 18,000. So you want to know, when are you likely to get an interview for your parents? I think you mentioned it was for your parents. And so what you then have to do is figure out how many cases per 1,000 there are. And if we take this as a sort of an average, that's 50 cases every 2,000. This is 2,000 blocks, right? So it's about 25 cases, maybe a little bit less, but about 25 cases per 1,000 in Addis, right? Which means that if they take 100 cases in the next month, and bear in mind they just took 88 in March, and they took 143 in February and 113 in January, right? So it's a pretty safe bet that they're going to take 100 cases, let's say, in the next month, right? I'm hoping they'll take more. I'm hoping they'll take 200. But let's say they take 100, right? If there are 25,000 cases per 100, 25 cases per 1,000, then they can, and they took 100 cases, then they would move 4,000, right? They would move the numbers up and they would issue 2NLs up to about case number 18,000 and something in next month. That's for June interviews, right? Now, if they go to 200, they can do another 4,000 beyond that, and they go to about 22,000, right? But they haven't they haven't taken 200 cases in any given month prior to today, right? So it would be a big increase for them to get to 200. So I'm hoping maybe they'll do 150, which means they'll move at about 6,000 cases per month. And there are 4 months left, right? So that would give us another 24,000 on top of the 14,000. And theoretically, they could therefore get to 38,000. That's kind of the math. That's if they're doing 150 per month. If they only do 100 per month, they're going to do 16,000 more than the 14,000 they've currently got, and that would get them to about 30,000, right, by the end of the year. Now, this is all assumptive based on how many cases will they give, what's their capacity going to be set at monthly. I'm hoping they're going to be setting it at least 100, and I'm hoping for 150, maybe 200. But realistically, we're probably going to see something in the sort of the 100 to 150 range. Okay, but your particular case at 18,000, you're pretty comfortable because you only need them to do another probably another month. And if it's not in June, it would then be in July, right? Now, what I just did is the same process you can do for any embassy. So there's no need for 15 of you to now ask me to do the same thing in every other embassy, right? You can do what I just did. You look at the capacity that they're using month to month, right? And you make an assumption. And you can make an assumption same as I can, right? Just don't make a stupid assumption like, oh yeah, I think they're going to take 483 cases per month when they've never done that, right? That would be a stupid assumption to make, right? But if Addis, 100 seems reasonable, right? And then you just need to know how many cases per 1,000 there are, that will get you to some sort of reasonable estimate. They do have a few cases to fill in that have been skipped between 11,300 and 14,000, so that's going to be a bit of a slowdown. But yeah, they're in good shape apart from that. They're just not going to get to very high numbers, of course. I mean, that's just not going to happen, right? Okay, so hopefully, I hope that answered your question, Rebel. Okay, let me get back on that camera angle. Okay. I'm from Ethiopia. What's the chance to get 21K steel 2NL not delivered? You should go and have a look at what I just showed, right? Hopefully that will give you the same answer. So I answered the question up to 18,000. Your 21,000, it's a little bit more. Probably a July interview, I would suspect, but you've got a very good chance, right? Hi there. If my VB are current in June, my case number 21 EU 21,000, UKR national, Ukraine national in Warsaw. Does that mean that the interview will be appointed in July? Okay, so the visa bulletin, things work on a little bit of a sort of a little bit of a flow ahead of time, right? So we're in April. We're going to see in the next week probably. We'll see the visa bulletin for the next month of interviews, which is June, right? So there's a bit of a delay, if you like, between the visa bulletin being issued, then the 2NLs coming out. So the process roughly means visa bulletin comes out between the 8th and the 15th of the month. As soon as the visa bulletin is out, we start seeing the 2NLs coming out, and the 2NLs come out between the visa bulletin point and the end of the month, right? And those 2NLs are for 6 weeks later, roughly, about 6-7 weeks. It's for a couple of months later, in a sense, right? So the 2NLs will come out in April, and they're concerning June interviews. So if you get current in June, let's say you're talking about the visa bulletin that's going to be published in June, then that's concerning August interviews, right? Not July interviews. That's that point. But EU 21,000, I don't think you're going to be waiting that long for that particular scenario, right? I think EU 21,000 is probably going to be current in the next visa bulletin, which means a June interview is possible and maybe a July interview, right? That's roughly the timeline I think you probably have. Okay. Winner age number AS800. Is there a possibility that DS260 will not be processed before the end of the fiscal year by MVC, despite submitting it early? Firstly, MVC do no processing of DV cases. It says at MVC, but actually it's processed by KCC. There are still cases that have not been processed. I think in general, they want to process all those cases before the end of this month, because in May, they're going to be getting a flood of new 2NLs for DV 2025, right? So even though they've had to process a lot more DS260s this year than in any other year, because they've had so many more selectees, that has slowed them down a little bit. But generally speaking, they should be caught up, I think, by the end of this month, right? Now, they can't guarantee to finish every single case, because some cases need extra background checking. And if somebody submitted quite late, then it might take time for that to be processed. But generally speaking, I rarely, in all the 10 years I've been doing this, I rarely ever hear about someone who consistently is waiting for their DS260 to be processed, and it goes on forever. That's never happened as far as I'm concerned. So I would be amazed if it started happening now. I don't think that will happen. Okay. Do you require an affidavit of support when filling in the DS260? Not at that point. The affidavit of support is shown if asked. If you're asked for it, it'll be asked for at the interview. You don't have to do it earlier on. Okay. I had won 2021. My case number was 18,500. Waited for 2NL, but time elapsed before it was submitted, and a case was reserved. Is there any hopes for us? Right. If you were a part of, if you can benefit from one of the DV 2021 lawsuits, then you've got some hope. If you were either on one of the 2021 lawsuits, right, or you can benefit from the RAI case, which covered certain embassies in about 26 embassies, mainly in Europe. If you can benefit from that, then you might have a chance. If you were not a plaintiff, if you did not sign up for one of the lawsuits, and you can't benefit from RAI, then your case number is over. Your case is gone. There's no further benefit you can get. Okay, that's the way it works. Is there days when applying for green card you have a great chance to be selected, please? No, there's the day of entry has nothing to do with the chances of being selected. Absolutely none. Okay. In fact, by mistake one year that actually happened, where people entering in the first few days, this was DV 2012, all the winners were being selected from the first few days of entry, and they realized there was a technical mistake with the program. They threw away all the results and redrew the whole process. And I understand technically how it happened. There was a big lawsuit about it. That lawsuit was actually very useful because it revealed a lot of information, and that's kind of the information I read when I started talking about DV Lottery in 2013. But other than that particular 1 year where it was a complete mistake and it was all the results were thrown away, the day you enter, whether it's on the first day or the last day or a Tuesday or a Wednesday or whatever, it makes no difference to your chance of selection. Nor does anything else about whether you're single, whether you're married, or any other, or your education level, or your height, or the size shoes that you take. None of that makes any difference. It's a random selection, okay? Regardless of everything else. If I attended school in Northern Cyprus and it's not in reciprocity site, should I still try to obtain a police certificate from there? You have to read the instructions, read the reciprocity page, and decide for yourself. I don't know the particulars about Cyprus or Northern Cyprus or whatever else. You just have to read the reciprocity page. Okay. Hi Simon, if the family apply and one of the child picture is not fulfill requirements, will it not be considered? any of the photos, even for a derivative, can cause the case to be disqualified even before the draw is announced. So that's how holes are created. Okay, so now you don't mention how the picture didn't fulfill the requirements. So it depends what you mean by that. But if you had a picture of a donkey's butt instead of your child, then your case is going to be ejected, and you'll become a hole, and that's basically you've got no chance, right? Okay. Hello, Simon. My friend won DV 2024 and is having the interview this month. He wants to qualify through work experience. Interior design is the work. What does he need to get on the same? Okay, so interior design is one of those sort of oddball areas where he may have done some sort of education in order to do that work. He might not. So the question would be: is he at a professional level? Is he making a living from interior design? And if so, then he should read the ONET and see if that's a possibility. But I've written a blog article that explains this in great detail, so I don't want to go into it in great detail now. And I also have a video that previously created that explains this in detail. So go to my blog, brittsimonsays.com, and search for, or just Google my name, Brit Simon, and work experience. Brit Simon, work experience, right? And you'll come up with a blog post I wrote several years ago that explains how you prove how you check whether your work experience will qualify you or not, and then how you prove that case. And you would prove it by showing, does he get a salary? Does he get an income? Is he self-employed? Does he have accounts? If he's self-employed, he should have an accountant and accounts, etc. And how much money has he made, or is this just a part-time hobby? Is he actually a bricklayer who does interior design as a hobby for a couple of his friends at the weekend? That's not going to qualify him, right? If it's just a hobby. But if he's a full-time professional interior designer, or he or she, then that can be a qualification that could meet the requirements. But read on my article to check exactly how that will work. Okay. What do I think about OC 2850 or 2850 range? Very risky because of the case number. It shouldn't go current, frankly. So we'll have to wait and see, but it shouldn't. It's probably too high. What do you think about my case number of 107,000? Is there any hope? I think I already answered you, Youssef. Still no better hope than when I gave the example of Jennifer Lopez before. Any update on the Addis Embassy? Yeah, I've just given you exactly a rundown of that. What do you think, Egypt? I don't know about Egypt in the coming VB. Will EU be current this year? Probably not. I applied for DV 2025. I gave birth in the USA to 2 of my kids and paid off my bills in full. Would this pose as a problem when I win? Probably not, no. Some people have struggled with that. Like you mentioned, if you came to America, you built up medical bills, you didn't pay those medical bills, and then you left, then that can cause a problem. The CEO has a right to say, well, you've just taken the mickey out of the system and you were a public charge. You've proven to us that you habitually become a public charge, right? That's exactly what you would be doing. If you force the government to pay for your medical bills and force taxpayers like me to pay for your medical bills, then that is the definition of public charge. So you can be refused on public charge grounds if you can't show that you paid the medical bills yourself. Okay, so yeah, figure that out. But good luck in the draw. No point in worrying about this really at this point. Your chance of selection is something like 1 in 100 years. So wait to be selected before you get worried about that. Okay. From Algeria, case number 76K. Is there any hope to get an interview? There's some hope. Yeah. Hi, Britt. Can I save the affidavit of support? What? Can I be saved with an affidavit of support of date of birth? What? You're talking about creating an affidavit, not an affidavit of support, but an affidavit that backs up your date of birth. I have a mistake with my month of birth on my West Africa exam certificate. Okay, your birth certificate is what proves your birth date, right? Not your education certificate. It is quite common in Africa for some reason, well, I know the reason, that people mess up their birth date on education certificates in Africa in particular, in countries where education isn't available for everybody yet for free. And so they are used to seeing that. However, what proves your date of birth is not your education certificate. Your education certificate proves your education. Your date of birth is proven by your birth certificate, right? So you really don't need an affidavit to prove your birth certificate if you've got your birth certificate. See what I mean? So, yeah. So don't worry about the education thing. What can we do to make the Kigali embassy increase the performance as we remain about 3 months there in low prospects? There's nothing we can do. We've tried suing them, not Kigali in particular, but we've tried suing embassies, etc., and they don't respond. There's really nothing we can do to force them to do what you think they should do. There's nothing we can do. What you do is you react appropriately. You figure out, okay, my embassy's not going to take care of me. I better get to another embassy, right? And hopefully you've been listening since early January, when I've been explaining that and telling people, get the hell out of this country, that country, move to another embassy. I've given plenty of instruction on how to do that. So I hope you haven't become locked into Kigali. Okay, I'm from Europe, Albania, with a case number of 35. What do you think of the number? Do you think we'll get an interview? I'm worried. Thank you in advance. You're going to stay worried, I'm afraid. I can't give you a guaranteed answer. You're going to have to wait and see. And probably for each of the 4 months, you probably are not going to know for sure until July. And so you just have to wait until then. Good luck, though. Okay. If someone wins the DV lottery when they're already in America pending asylum, what should they do to pursue their DV chance? That person can file an adjustment of status if they're in America and they're in status and they've never been in any illegal or out of status. Then they could file an adjustment of status, and it can work. It's a bit risky, it's a bit complicated, but I suggest you go to forums.immigration.com and check out what someone's mum says about adjustment of status in the USA. Okay. EU 33,000 from Russia. What needs to happen for this number to be invited? The number needs to go current. That's the main thing. I can't, it's a bit of a broad statement, but firstly, you need to go current. That's the first thing. And that means there's going to be a big push between 18K, where we are now, for the region, actually, not just for Russia, but for the region, and to get to 33K. So, it's risky, put it like that. It's a risky number for Russia in particular. When should I expect to receive my 2NL? My case number is AF35K. I've been current. Thanks for updating us. Patricia, it really depends on which embassy you're at. If you're in Addis, then you probably won't get current. If you're in Monrovia, you will certainly be, or you won't get an interview, rather, in Addis. In Monrovia, you would probably have been scheduled already, right? So it depends on your embassy. It's not just about your number. My friend wins the DV lottery, but during the entry he entered he is single, and during the DS 160 form, or 260 form, he included the wife and child. He was denied. Any chance for a second interview? No, for fuck's sake. No, he was denied correctly. Why would he get a second interview? Why would he want to pay the fees a second time simply to be denied? He should never have attended the first interview. If he'd have asked that question of me, I'd have told him, without a shadow of a doubt, you're going to be disqualified at the interview. So you're just going to waste your money at the interview. And asking for a second interview, why would he Like, that's stupid. He messed up. I was about to start a word with F, but he messed up. He broke the rules. He was disqualified totally predictably. And he gave them all the evidence they needed, by the way, by filling in the DS-260. So yeah, that guy was your friend is a bit dopey. He was never going to get his DV lottery win because he lied when he entered the process. He said he was single and he wasn't single, and because you lie in the process, that's what gets you disqualified. Britt, please, do you have to add children above 21 on the DS-260 which were not added during the entry process? Yes, you have to add them. You have to list all your children that are even not eligible to go with you, because they're trying to establish all the family relationships. So yes, you're supposed to have listed the children over 21. It clearly says, like if you just read the form, like on the DV entry, it says don't enter children over 21. On the DS-260, it says list all your children, right? It doesn't say list the children only if they're under 21 or only if their name is Henry. It doesn't say that extra stuff. So that means you have to read the form and answer the question that it asks you, right? List all your children. Okay, that's all my children, whether they're married or whether they're single, whether they're over 21, whether they're blue, right? All of them. Rubbish row. What's the timeline on being able to get work once you're in the USA? You can start work the next day. When you're a DV lottery winner and you enter the USA, you're immediately eligible to work. The only delay you might have is getting your social security number. Actually, people get very worried about, oh, I haven't received my green card. I've been here 2 months or whatever. Your green card's not important. What's important is your social security number, and that normally arrives within 2 to 3 weeks. So an employer is supposed to see your SSN, social security number, before starting you on work. In fact, there's like a 3 or 4 day grace period. But very quickly you'll be asked for your social security number. That's the biggest thing. So in legal terms, you can start work the next day. In practical terms, probably will take a couple of weeks for you to actually start working. Okay. Okay. Ken says, finally, he's been able to watch one of the lives. That's great. Glad you did. Worldwide Cinema Kigali. Do you think 31K? Okay. Well, we'll have to see what Kigali does, right? Friend has his case number 11K. Does he have a chance this year in Accra Embassy? Probably not. The Accra are only issuing about 30 interviews per month. Not even that in the first couple of months. And at that pace, they probably won't get to 11K, but it's possible that they start issuing maybe 40 or 50 cases per month, and then your friend would have a chance. Fingers crossed for him. Okay, but Accra's not doing well. Okay, I'm going to look for a couple of final questions here. Let me just see if I can find a nice couple of questions. Check the Accra Embassy too. I showed you how you could do it. You can do exactly what I did. Was waiting for your live session. What's your prediction about this month about VB for Asia? Already did that. Already gave an estimation. You never see my comments, please. I've seen this one. Let me just see this one. Can you say what's the highest case number for Europe or Romania? You see, you ask a question and you're not clear, you're not specific, you're very vague. Highest case number what? Highest case number selected? Highest case number that will be interviewed? What? You have to be a bit clear. So I tend to ignore very vague questions or questions that are constantly repeated. And so then you're going to say, I never see your comments. No, I do see your comments. I just ignore them because they're vague, right? Okay. Hybrid, what's going to happen this month for EU, for Ankara, for Iranians? Yeah, I'm not going to get really specific about one particular embassy and what they're going to do for Iranians versus Europeans. And no, I'm not, I don't know. Greetings, Simon. If I get selected, my host would be a retired real estate agent who is a US citizen, has been for more than 30 years. Would that have any negative effect, him being retired? If he's retired and has a decent income above the poverty guidelines, then he can sponsor you. But if he has a very low income, then he can't sponsor you, because it's all about the income. It doesn't matter whether he's retired or not. It's about his income. And some people in America retire on quite decent incomes because, especially if he's a real estate agent, he may have built up a property portfolio over the years and may have a perpetual income from that, which he can show, and he would be paying tax, etc. But if he's living on just the bare minimum, like Social Security, which is $2,000 or $3,000 a month, he's not in a position to support you and couldn't meet the poverty guidelines, right? So it depends on his situation. Okay. How's Montreal doing? They're doing okay. You're from Nepal. Your best embassy for a Nepalese case is Kathmandu, frankly. But Nepal is doing, Montreal is doing okay. The only problem with Montreal is that they tend to issue a lot of DS-5535s, which is extra background checks after the interview, and that can slow cases down. So, it's a bit of a problem in Montreal. Good luck. Anyway, okay. Let me see. I entered the US to activate my visa, left immediately back home to my country, returned 364 days later, left again, and an hour later, CBP didn't give a shit about, said no re-entry permit needed for under a year. Yeah, that's right. So you left for 364 days, that's under a year, and so technically you hadn't caused a problem. But when you then turn back around and you left again, you're building up a pattern of not actually living in the USA. And so at some point, a CBP officer could actually say to you, or an immigration officer, could actually say to you, actually, you're clearly not living in the USA. So don't keep doing this game, right? You're going to get yourself in trouble sooner or later, John. Don't keep doing that, right? You need the green card is a permission to live and work in the USA, not come here one day a year and then for 2 hours and then go again. That's not what it's for. It's not a visitor's visa. You can get an ESTA for that, or a B1, right? Also, I hope you've been filling in your tax forms, because if you don't fill in your tax forms, that can also cause your disqualification as an LPR, right? So, or you won't achieve citizenship. And by the way, what you're doing is delaying the day when you can go for citizenship as well, with your long periods of time outside of the USA. So be careful with all of that, okay? Not a good idea, to be honest. Okay, lots of repetitive questions here. Let me just find one more good one. Okay, that's probably just one to calm you down. Hi, Brett. My case 49K in Cameroon. Didn't include my daughter, 23 years old, on the DS-260. She was above age, and I filled the DS-260 for my 3 sons as derivatives. Is that going to cause problems during the interview? Yeah, it's not going to cause a problem in the interview. You just need to correct it, right? So when you do get scheduled, if you haven't been scheduled already, contact the embassy and say you need to add your 23-year-old daughter onto the form. You should have included her, okay? But just make sure that's done either prior to the interview or in the interview. It's just a simple change on your own form, your DS-260, to list that daughter. You obviously don't create a DS-260 for that daughter because she's over the age, but you do need to list her on your own form. Okay, so you can correct that during the interview. Okay. Okay. I'm just scrolling down to see if there's an interesting question, but no. Okay. Last hopeful question here. I have upcoming interview coming next year, tourist visa USA. I also applied for the DV Lottery 25. In case I'm being selected, what should I do in this case? It's not a problem. You don't have to worry about it. If you're selected, which is very unlikely, but if you are selected, then then you won't go for your tourist visa, I presume. if you wanted to go for your tourist visa because you haven't received your green card process yet through the DV lottery, then yeah, you can do that too. There's really no problem here. You can be asking for a non-immigrant visa and an immigrant visa at the same time. It's not a problem. It's just that you're less likely to get the non-immigrant visa once you've asked for the immigrant visa. Okay. Okay, we'll call that a day. Hang on a second. Yeah, we'll call that a day, I think. Thanks to all of you to take the time to join me today. If you have a question I didn't get to, go to britsimonsays.com, britsimonsays.com, and ask the question there. And I will always answer those questions there. And sometimes it's a bit easier in writing, right? Please do subscribe to the channel. Fingers crossed for those of you that in about 4 weeks from now, on May the 4th, you'll be checking your DV 2025 results. Look for some videos from me between now and then to start to give instructions to people about DV 2025. And when we do have some winners from DV 25, I want to start gathering some data from those people. So I'll be announcing an effort on that as well. All right, everybody. Thanks very much for joining me today. Have a great day. Bye-bye.